For centuries, the ruins of Cahokia, this vast, ancient metropolis right in the heart of North America, have been a huge puzzle for archaeologists. I mean, what was this place? But what if the key to understanding this lost city wasn't buried in the earth, but was actually written in the sky? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical new theory that suggests Cahokia wasn't just built on land, but was engineered to harness the power of the moon and its connection to the most essential element of all, water.
You hear this phrase, and it sounds so poetic, right? It comes from the Caddo people, who lived hundreds of miles south of Cahokia. But for them, look, this wasn't just some quaint piece of folklore. It was a profound truth. The moon was a rain-bringer, this powerful celestial being whose cycles govern the rhythms of life. And as we're about to see, this single belief may have been the actual blueprint for one of America's greatest ancient civilizations.
Okay, so most of us know the moon's monthly phases. Full moon, new moon. But ancient sky watchers, they knew something much, much deeper. Over this long 18.6-year cycle, the moon does this slow, grand dance across the horizon. Its rising and setting points swing dramatically from a northernmost extreme to a southernmost one. These were predictable but rare events, and for the people of ancient America, these were moments of immense power.
So how in the world did researchers come to this cosmic conclusion? Well, it started with a trail of archaeological clues, like a detective story. And our story doesn't begin in the massive city of Cahokia itself, but at this smaller, kind of unassuming site called Prefer, where a really strange architectural pattern first popped up.
So, at the Fever site, archaeologists were digging up what they thought were just ordinary houses. But they found something bizarre. Buildings had been systematically torn down and rebuilt right on top of one another, over and over again. And here's the weird part. Each time, the new building was constructed at a slightly different angle. This wasn't sloppy work, it was deliberate. And it was a total mystery.
And here's what they were doing. Get this. The builders were intentionally flipping the alignment of their structures. One building would be perfectly aligned to the moon's minimum northern rising point. Then, years later, they'd tear it down and rebuild it to align with the maximum northern rising point. They were marking the extremes of that 18.6-year cycle directly into the architecture of their world. It's incredible.
But the moon alignment was only half the story. Archaeologists discovered that in between these rebuilds, the empty building foundations were ritually filled. They just leave them open to the elements, letting the rain wash in and deposit these fine layers of silt. So instead of building a mound up, they were kind of building a mound down, using water to consecrate the space. The link was becoming crystal clear. Moon, water, ritual. They all went together.
All right, the next clue takes us way up north, hundreds of miles away to Trempilio, Wisconsin. This was a pilgrimage site, a distant outpost built by Cahokians. And it's here that the sheer scale of their cosmic obsession becomes just breathtakingly clear.
Their ambition here was just on another level. I mean, they didn't just build on the landscape, they literally sculpted it. They moved tons and tons of earth just to reorient an entire bluff top by 3 degrees, creating this massive, perfectly aligned monument to the minimum north moonrise. They even built mounds that seemed to mimic moon dogs. You know that rare halo effect you can see around the moon? This wasn't just building, this was cosmic architecture.
So, the trail now leads us back near Cahokia to another shrine complex called the Emerald Site. And this is where all the pieces of the puzzle, the moon, the water, the ritual, they all come together in the most dramatic way possible.
Okay, so first off, the Emerald Site was built on what the locals called a water hill, a place that literally seeps water all year round. Here, they built these special underground shrine houses, all aligned to the moon. And when it was time to decommission the site, they didn't just pack up and leave. No, they deconstructed the buildings and let a massive thunderstorm just wash over everything, burying the site in water-laid silt. And right at the heart of it all, they left an offering. A young person sacrificed and buried in that watery earth.
And now, with all these clues in hand, we can finally turn to Cahokia itself. See, these practices at the outlying sites, they weren't exceptions. They were the blueprint for the entire metropolis. This evidence forces us to completely reframe Cahokia, not just as a city of mounds, but as a city of water.
Cahokia's location was absolutely no accident. It was deliberately built to straddle dry land and a watery floodplain. It was surrounded by sacred water features, like sinkholes, which they saw as portals to the underworld. And the city itself was engineered with reservoirs and earthen causeways that connected all the mounds, creating this incredible landscape that was just alive with water.
So this is the crucial point right here. When we look at all the mounds of Cahokia, we find that as many as a third of them, a full third, were not the famous rectangular platforms we always see. They were circular, and they had a very, very special purpose.
These circular mounds held steam baths or sweat lodges, and these were not your local spa, okay? They were the absolute centers of ritual life. They were places for healing, for purification, and for powerful religious experiences. People likely traveled from hundreds of miles away not just to see the great city, but to take part in these water-based rituals, to be healed by Cahokia's power.
And here's the most stunning revelation of all. The very highest point of the city, the absolute center of the Cahokian world, right on top of the massive monk's mound. It wasn't a palace for some king, it wasn't a seat of political power, it was a huge circular steam bath. The sacred center of their entire universe was a place of communal ritual, healing, and water.
I mean, this just changes everything we thought we knew about Cahokia. But it raises an even bigger question. Why? What was the driving motivation behind this continent-spanning obsession with the moon and its watery tears? What was the point of it all?
Well, the answer, it turns out, lies not in the skies above Illinois, but hundreds of miles to the south. The cosmic power Cahokia was building had a very real, very material purpose: to control the flow of sacred substances.
Say, Cahokians established these vast trade networks to get two things they just couldn't find at home. First, large marine shells from the Gulf of Mexico, which they fashioned into sacred cups, and second, the leaves of the yaupon holly. This was used to brew a powerful, super caffeinated ceremonial tea known as the black drink, and it was absolutely central to their rituals.
So you get this incredible exchange going on. The peoples of the South provided the physical ingredients for ritual, the cups and the tea. And in return, Cahokia provided the cosmic framework. It was the religious hub, the place that understood the moon and its power over water. It offered knowledge, healing, and the direct connection to the forces that govern the entire world.
And this brings us full circle. The story of Cahokia began with this beautiful poetic belief that raindrops are the tears of the moon, and it forces us to ask one of the most fundamental questions about what it means to be human. The history of this great city suggested maybe we don't just build civilizations for food, or for safety, or for political power. Maybe we build them out of this deep, driving need to understand our place in the cosmos, to connect with the powerful forces we see all around us, and to build that understanding right into the very fabric of our homes and our lives.
Cahokia really shows us that sometimes the answer isn't about controlling the earth beneath our feet, but about reaching for the moon in the sky. It asks us to reconsider not just this one lost city, but the very reasons we build, create, and search for meaning in the first place.